Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Our House 21, and I've been teasing in my last few videos about thinking that I finally figured out what's going on with Slade. So I think it's about time for me to, step back and show you what I've been thinking. Now, if you notice in the video, something looks a little different here. So if you look at Slade, you will see that Slade has been fitted with a new spoiler. And I actually fabbed this up by hand at my dining room table. And I've got a video that's going to be posted shortly just showing you what I did and how I did it. But now I'm going to focus on why I did it. So if those of you have been following along with the comments on the latest videos, and thank you guys for the great response on the latest videos. Those are some long videos, but you guys seem to just eat it up. Those were some great speed runs, and it's always good to be able to laugh at yourself a little bit. But everybody took it in good spirits, and lots of great words of encouragement. You guys are a great community, so I thank you. I appreciate it, and you guys rock. But again, you know that. But overall, a lot of comments have been focusing in on, what could be going on, and a few in particular, kind of threatened to steal my thunder. So I figured I need to go ahead and just throw this video up. But basically what I've concluded is that I'm facing a drag problem, and this is not new. I mean, this isn't new news. If you guys look back at my previous speedrun videos from last year, preceding my 70-mile-an-hour crash, actually, I think early on in the 73-mile-an-hour crash video, you'll see that Slade on 2S LiPo was able to do 60.6 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. That's pretty fast on a 2S LiPo pack, but that was actually slower than what I believed I did on a non-GPS. And I went back and I calculated from the footage. I figured I was somewhere in the 65-mile-an-hour range with a 2S LiPo. So what's the deal? With Slade, with 3S LiPo, I'm maxing out right now at about, just under 70 miles an hour. But I believed I was doing nearly 65 miles an hour with 2S LiPo. Something's not right here, right? Well, like I said, I've been backing into this for a while. And what it all boils down to is aerodynamic drag. So it's no secret that the wrestlers have an aerodynamic issue approaching 70 miles an hour. That's the whole reason why the 70-plus-mile-an-hour club exists, because it's hard to get a wrestler to break past 70 miles an hour. And part of that reason is because wrestlers in their stock stance. Now, Slade isn't stock anymore, but he still has, I haven't lowered him as much as a lot of the other guys have. But you see, when you get right down in here, Slade and all the wrestlers have this nice rake. And that's set up because this is a rear-wheel drive, two-wheel drive car. And so the motor and the majority of the weight, about 2/3 of the weight stock, sits over the rear axle, and that's so you get traction so that your overpowered motor doesn't send you spinning off and everything. The problem with that stance though is that air comes in and gets underneath the car and makes the front end light, and so you lose steering. But in addition to that, the bottom of the wrestlers are a nice flat plate, so you get all that air trapped under the car, and eventually they just fly off the road. And if you look, just search YouTube. There's lots of videos where you see guys, and there's a great video, I forgot the guy's name, but I'll have to look him up and down in the comments later. But he did a set of speed runs out in the desert with his wife driving, I assume it was his wife, but basically he was in the passenger seat of a pickup truck while they were going down this nice straight desert road. So basically they were chasing the car, and this was a Wrestler VXL. It got up to about 70 miles an hour and then just flew off the road. And presumably it got hit by a gust of wind. Doesn't really matter, but basically when you get up to that speed, these wrestlers start to produce lift. And I talked about that in the Aerodynamics 101 video. But you get a lot of lift going through, so the car gets lighter. You got the rear wheels fighting for dear life to hold traction, pushing as hard as they can with the light front end. All it takes is a little bit aerodynamic upset and the car gets light, the rear end flies out, and it just goes airborne. And we've all seen those videos time and time again. This is the whole reason why the conventional wisdom for getting rustlers fast is by adding weight. You put more weight down, makes the car sit lower, but it also cancels out the extra lift, and it also generates downforce, and it makes it a whole lot easier for the cars to push through the 70-mile-an-hour barrier. I decided to take a different approach. Instead, I decided to add aerodynamics. So I had a lot of discussion going back and forth about this blunt airfoil on the front of Slade. And yeah, it is kind of blunt, so this is generating drag, but it has a purpose here because this doesn't have a battery in it, so he's sitting a little bit high, but sitting down low, and it does push down a little bit. It takes all that airflow that would be going underneath Slade, generating lift, and funnels it over the car. Now, these little sections right here at the end are pretty blunt. Now, if you look at them, they are scoop pattern, and they basically these are made to produce downforce at fairly low speeds. So this angle is pretty steep. So it comes up, it kicks up, and it's going to cause some tumble. So aerodynamic turbulence going over the body of the car, and that's going to generate some drag. But I figured that was a trade-off because I'm getting some drag there because there's some interference from where the air from this interfaces with the free stream, but I'm also canceling off a lot of lift. And as you guys have seen, you know, when this thing catches air, it digs in. And when I did that one particular run where the support bracket broke off, and that was because it was secured with zip ties, because I was still testing out the theory. Now I know the theory works, so I've riveted it in place. But basically, now this guy's nice and strong. But anyway, you saw in that video that, you know, this guy generates significant downforce, pushes the front end down, that honker sits down, makes it nice and planted, cancels a lot of airflow. So I think that even though I am costing drag here, it's probably worth it. But on the back here, I use the same spoiler, and this is completely unnecessary because, as I mentioned before, the primary function of this rear spoiler is really just to act like the quiver in an arrow. So as I was mentioning before, the rustlers, by looking at all the videos, it's easy to see that the rustlers have some directional stability problems when they get up to speed. Basically, like I was saying, typically they get lift underneath, the front end gets light, so it's hard for they lose steering control, or the rear end basically just tries to pass the front of the car for a variety of reasons. This, this spoiler right here, it has these nice little slots in here that catch the air and they act like a rudder on an airplane and helps you keep it straight. But they also have these significant kick-ups at the end of this wicker bill type of thing, and that, you know, is to, like I said, generate downforce. And if you saw my spring testing video where Slade was, you heard the ch sound, and what I call it flutter. What was going on is the springs were so soft, the rear end would catch the air, dig in, slam, it would rebound, come back up, start making downforce again, slam down, and go over and over again. So if you watch that video in slow motion, you can see the rear end of Slade porpoising, going up and down. Switching to the GTR shocks with their higher spring rate, pretty much damped out or canceled out that fluttering motion. But it kind of masked the effect that this was producing a lot of excess downforce, which was basically just turning into drag. I mean, just look at it, it's not the cleanest aerodynamic shape. So I concluded that I probably don't need the downforce that's coming out of the rear, but I do still need the directional stability. So that brings us up to my new spoiler. So this guy right here, we see him, if you look straight, this guy is made out of sheet metal. He's flat. Now, for those of you who are familiar with my friend Bernoulli and the Bernoulli principle, airfoils generate lift, and I talked about this in Aerodynamics 101, by basically curving airflow around a curved object. And if you look at this spoiler, you see it has some significant curves. That's called camber. So this is a highly cambered wing. Highly cambered wings, when they produce, well, this is high cambered, low aspect ratio. That means it's a short, fat wing. High cambered, low aspect ratio wings produce a lot of drag. It's just physics. So in this case, by having a flat plate, there's no camber on this at all. And if you look at how I have it set up, it basically has zero angle of attack. Essentially, this wing is just serving as an aero, it's basically serving as a horizontal stabilizer or a vertical, basically it's a stabilizer. So its job is when Slade starts to get a little cockeyed. So if you look at him going this way, traveling through the wind, if he starts to turn sideways, the airflow will actually catch the sides, these vertical surfaces, and so if it gets sideways, the air will catch and then put a force to straighten him out. And that's the entire purpose of having this thing back here. So if I do decide that when I do the runs that I do need some extra downforce, I factored in this little slat piece so I can adjust it. And it moves a little bit freely now. I want to add some friction to it so it will go, it'll basically be, it'll hold its position a lot better, especially once it starts to get catching air. But the idea is that if I want to add some downforce, I can do that in a way that isn't as expensive as this guy right here. So I think this was a good learning tool and it got me in the right direction. But, you know, yeah, I think that ultimately there was just too much drag. Now, the next question would be, wait a second, we're not talking about a whole lot of drag here. I mean, God, look at the size of these things. They're tiny. I mean, what's the deal? I mean, are you really telling me that this little modification that is enough to keep you below 70 miles an hour? Well, let's take a look at the math. And I'm going to spare you all the equations. I've shown you all those before, but this is just a little printout of something I did on the computer. So this is just saying that, well, let's look at my baseline speed. That's right here, 68 miles an hour. That's basically Slade's fastest runs, 68.3. And that, I believe, is the aerodynamic limit of, you know, roughly 70-degree air with the front and rear spoiler. Why do I say aerodynamic limit? Well, that's because Slade on 3 independent runs has clocked a top speed of 68 miles an hour, which is kind of freaky. You say, well, that's not that big deal. You know, you gear it to a certain ratio and that's the speed you get. Thing is, that's not what happened, because if you look back here, I've got my Mod 1 gears and I've kept the same pinion, but I've kept the same spur gear, but I've actually changed to 3 different pinions. And the top 2 pinions were, well, I'll just go ahead and tell you, I was using a 25 tooth pinion and then a 20 tooth pinion. And on both of those runs, I got the exact same speed, 68 miles an hour. So how can 2 different gear ratios give me the identical top speeds? Well, it's really simple. What that's saying is that the limiting factor of the speed in this situation is not the gear ratio. Now, if you just follow me along with this, when your vehicle is flying through the air, you have 2 major forces at play. You have the force of the wheels driving the vehicle forward, and you have the force of the air pushing the vehicle back. No matter what the gear ratio is out of the motor, it's still the same motor, and it's still the same power system. That power system is rated for a certain amount of energy or a certain amount of power going through. So power is energy per second. So go down here to the equations again. P equals IV. So you have current that's going through the motor, and you have voltage, and that's what's coming through the battery. So there's an inverse relationship between power and voltage and current in a lot of places in the power system. When the battery is being asked to deliver much more electrical power, it actually drives the voltage lower. So in order to maintain the power, it actually has to push and increase the amount of current. So as you pull more power from the battery, the voltage goes down even further, so more current needs to come out of it, but it's still giving you the same amount of power. So that brings us to my little table here. So you're looking at my baseline speed here, 68 miles an hour, and that's, that's what Slade has hit with a couple different gear ratios on a few different runs. So I think that, and based upon everything that everyone's seen online, it's clear that there is an aerodynamic wall around 70 miles an hour with the rustlers. Okay, because Slade has the extra drag coming from the front and rear spoilers, that's actually exacerbated a bit. So Slade is a higher drag configuration. So I had made the assumption that the Castle Creations power system that I have on board this vehicle had enough excess power where I could push through the extra drag and get into the high speeds I wanted. It's looking like that's not the case because, like I said, with two different gear ratios, and those two different gear ratios will actually give me different amounts of theoretical maximum torque at the wheels. Didn't matter. I still hit the limit with the amount of power, the overall power that the power system was able to push through. So what that says is that, I've hit the wall, I've hit the aerodynamic limit, and I've hit the power limit. And for an average day with average air density, and barometric pressure, I'm getting an effective power balance or a wall of about 68 miles an hour with Slade. What can I do about it? Well, I'm not at the point where I'm ready to upgrade the power system yet. No, I mean, an easy thing to do, and some of the guys like MR Tuner, he did this, and it was kind of a brilliant move on his part, and I've mentioned that to him on his channel. He has gone away from the standard power or standard ESC. So he's running a 1410 motor just like I am, but he's gone away from the Sidewinder power ESC that I use, and he has a Mamba Max, or he has a Mamba, one of the various Mamba systems which are rated for success. Basically, they're much higher power rated ESC. So that, I believe, is able to handle the extra current that's coming out of the SMC battery that he's getting, and that's able to get him past the limit. Now, James Speck down in Florida, he's running the VXL power system. So he's able to push through, I believe, because if you look up the specs, the power rating of the Traxxas VXL power systems is kind of nutty. They claim to be able to do 350 amps of either 325 or 350 amps. Which if you do the math out with the 3S with the 3S battery, that's very, very large. So I think that with the Sidewinder power system, I'm hitting my maximum amount of power for this aerodynamic configuration. So what can I do with Slade to help get me further? Well, the easy answer there, like I was mentioning before, is try to make Slade cleaner. I still think I need the downforce on the front to basically help to help turn the airflow, keep it from going underneath the vehicle and get it going over the top. But out here in the back, the main purpose of this guy right here is actually just to provide stability. And I don't need the highly cambered airfoil like this to do that. I can get the stability with something that looks more like a flat plate. Now, looking at the table, you'll see that, comparing the drag at 68 miles an hour versus 65 miles an hour, it only takes 91% of the amount of drag force, or the car only feels 91% of the drag force at 65 that it feels at 68. But at 70, it actually feels 6% more. 6% doesn't sound like a lot, but if I'm maxing out a power system, I can't get anything else out of it. Going over here to the power side, again, between 65 and 68 miles an hour, there's a 13% difference. So, it's pretty simple to, well, not simple, but you can see that, there's a significant difference between just 3 miles an hour, 13%, going from 68 to 70, that's an extra 10%. So if I'm, maxing out 1800 watts, I have to, which is roughly what these power systems or with 3S at 12 volts will give me, 10% on top of that, that's another 180 watts. That's a lot of extra power. Now, again, we've seen that the voltage is dropping significantly, which means the current is kicking up, but still we get a certain, in order to do the speeds, you still need the amount of power to be supplied from somewhere. And I think that I'm hitting the internal current limit of the ESC. So the only two ways, like I said, to fight this are to make the car aerodynamically cleaner, which will give me less drag, which will consume less power in the power system. The other thing I could do is try to keep the voltage higher, which would also require less current to go through the ESC, which should let the ESC produce more power, because mostly these things are limited by current, not by voltage. So that's a lot of ifs on top of there. The easy thing to do there, like I said, is change the spoiler. And like I was saying before, when you look at the shape, you see this is highly cambered, so that's going to have a lot of drag. This guy right here, I can basically trim it up so it has no drag, unless the car becomes, get sideways, and then it will act like a quiver and just turn it back straight. And that's really all I think I need from here, because I've demonstrated now over the last couple sets of runs that these tires with the friction compound on, they're gripping well. And I'm putting the maximum amount of power I can get out of this power system down. So that's not an issue. The upgraded fan I put on seems to be working really well too, because I'm running at maximum power for a sustained amount of times, and the vehicle's, is not shutting down. So all the pieces are together. I just need to get cleaner. So first step, change the wing. You see he's fitted, he's on, he's ready to go. I haven't painted it up, but I was basically waiting until I go out and do some shakeouts or some tests, just make sure there's no additional modifications I need before I try to make it pretty. If this doesn't work, then the next step would be to modify this guy, and this guy, I don't think I make a new one. I think that the way I would go is basically cutting out these little high cambered pieces right here. So basically just make these sections just be a pass through and keep this little bar here as structure to help keep this thing from flapping around. I think that the center section, it's not too bad, and especially when you take into account the fact that when you put the body of the car in place, if I can get the body in place, it actually does a fairly good job of matching up to the contour of the vehicle. And like I said, the primary reason why I like keeping this here is the fact that if you look here at the side of these suspension arms, they want to push air down. Basically, they want to make lift. They want to fly. I don't want that touching free stream air. So this is basically acting like an aerodynamic shield to keep this thing from making lift. So I pretty strong that I want to keep this shielded. But if I need to do it, I can open this up. But then I might have to start, so then it becomes a balancing act. Am I going to get enough downforce off of this section of the wing in order to cancel off the lift I get from here? So that's a more advanced discussion, but hopefully I don't have to deal with it. All right, so that's kind of a catch-22. I'm using the force of the air to push the car down to the ground to give me better control and stability. And what I've discovered is that works really well. Slade is very stable at speed, and Slade is very forgiving at speed, which is something that a typical 3S Rustler at over 60 miles an hour is not. Look at the videos, you see what happens. But Slade has hit bumps, he's had broken parts, but the aerodynamics have stayed true, kept pushing the car down to the ground and have straightened the car out. So pretty much when I get him up to speed, I almost have to give little or no steering input. There was a situation where I did have to fight him a little bit, but that was because I was on some rough pavement. But overall, it is driving this thing at high speeds is actually very simple. So here's a challenge now. I've got two happy puppies that are waiting in the wings to get out there and show the world what they can do. The problem is it's getting cold. It's November, and there's only so many more good weekends left. So, you know, hopefully the new spoiler, as you see, it looks good. I still need to paint it up. It's not pretty yet, but it looks good. So hopefully Slade is ready to do some damage. And then I got Dizzy, who's been sitting here waiting in the wings very patiently with a gear change and sitting with a nice new lowered stance. And they're both chomping at the bit to get out there and show the world that they can do, some pretty cool stuff. I just need to get out there and do it. So thanks again for putting up another long video. You guys are great, like I mentioned before. And, keep the comments coming. Like, comment, subscribe, recommend this video or my videos up to other people. I'm trying to do some things here that are a little bit unique in the community. I'm trying to do some cool runs, do some cool stuff. I'm also trying to do some educating and, basically help to share the knowledge, share the wealth. I probably share more information than a lot of people do, not just technical information, but just setups, configurations, things that I'm thinking. I don't always think before I post, and I've commented about that and, kind of taking a little tongue-in-cheek at myself. But, I look at this as, this is a group project. We're all in this together, and we're all trying to accomplish the same goals. And one of the main goals there is having a great time and doing some cool things along the way. So, as always, you guys, thanks again. Thanks always. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and get out there and break it, fix it, do it all over again, and again, and again, and again. All right, guys, this is RH21 signing off. And remember, get out there and, it's not fun unless you break something, right? All right, you guys take care. Bye.